Welcome back to Anime Lockdown, everybody. This is the criticism of film criticism panel with Mark McPherson, and he has asked me to join him, so I will be here as well, mostly chiming in and commenting on things he says, but I'll also be watching the chat for any questions. How are you doing, Mark?
Great. It sounds like that the lockdown is going well.
Yes.
All right. So, yeah, we'll start off with the criticism of film criticism here. I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Mark McPherson. I am a film critic. Can they hear me?
Oh, sorry, that was my mistake. I turned the wrong fader up. I knew I was going to mess something up today. They should be able to hear you now.
Oh, okay. All right, dude. I can hear us now.
Sorry. Welcome to the panel. Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing swell. Lockdown is going perfectly. So yeah, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Mark McPherson. I am a film critic for filminquiry.com and twincitiesgeek.com. I'm also Rotten Tomatoes approved, so I'm on that site as well. And yeah, we're going to be talking about the criticism of film criticism today.
I suppose I should introduce myself to show a little bit of credibility.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you all know me as JP, the founder of Anime Lockdown. So you write professionally about film. I have written amateurly about film and anime for a long time, but I also work in film. So that's where my point of view comes from. I work in the sound department on a lot of television and movies. Did anybody see Uncut Gems or Hunters on Amazon?
Yeah.
I was the boom operator for those shows. Or I was part of the sound team. I was one of many boom operators, but I was part of the core crew.
Yeah, we've actually done this panel before.
Oh, we have?
Yeah.
It's probably been a decade.
I know, we knew that. So, yeah, I guess like I want to start off this by first describing, to like lay the groundwork here of like, the essential role of a film critic, which, like the way that like people have like a lot of outlooks on, what this particular profession is like, and like the immediate function that most people gravitate towards immediately, which is usually, the more like primary usage that a lot of people use them for is whether or not a film is worth seeing on the weekend. They post like the newest review, it goes up there and people decide whether or not, it's worth their time. That's kind of like an immediate function. That's what people gravitate towards quickly because it's the latest film out there and they go for that. But from like a grander function, I would say that, like what sets, the more notable film critics apart is that they offer insight, into more why a film is good. And more interestingly is to give a personal perspective about how they feel about it and where it's coming from. So in other words, if there's a particular film, about like, a particular culture or a subset of a culture or of gender or of race, different voices on that will have different perspectives and different viewpoints. And they basically offer their opinion through there. And that's essentially kind of like the biggest like qualifiers there is because like the great thing about film criticism is that you don't really require a degree or anything like that. It's all just a matter of, passion and how much you are devoted to film and how much you want to write about it. So like that's like the only thing I would see the primary qualifications you need for being a professional film critic is just that, you have to have a undying love for film and have something to say about it and a way to say it, whether it's through video or most commonly through, writing reviews. So there's, and I mean, that's the thing is like, there's no requirement, but it also helps to have some qualifications in, in looking into and educating yourself on aspects of film. I in particular have a degree in animation, which bleeds over a little bit more into filmmaking. So that helps me gain a little bit more perspective and take in a lot more stuff while I watch film. Because one of the things that I've noticed that a lot of people have said about film critics that they wish they would take in more are the technical aspects, to take in a little bit more about, what it's like to shoot certain scenes, to light certain scenes, like, how, sound design, anything, just like, just take a little bit more note of the technical side, because it's often an aspect that gets overlooked, by audiences mostly too, but also critics tend to glaze over this as well. So anytime they can, anytime, can go further and push yourself further, that always helps in that department.
I know that knowing too much about the technical side has hurt me sometimes. There's definitely been times where I had trouble watching a film because I couldn't focus on the distracting, maybe glaring issues with certain technical aspects, to be broad. Like if there's bad sound in a film, I have difficulty watching it.
And that's like not, I wouldn't even say that's like a hindrance, because that is part of, that perspective of, of someone's review. And usually if a technical aspect is off-putting, that can become part of the review. So like an example would be like, if you look at the last, was it Transformers: The Last Knight, that film shifts around in aspect ratios,
Oh boy.
wildly. Like in multiple scenes, it goes through many different aspect ratios. And that's a technical aspect. Now, whether or not that technical aspect bothered you would be part of the review or not. Because like for a lot of people who see chaotic films, they wouldn't notice that. But if you're very much into editing video and you take note of aspect ratios, that's going to bother you, and that's not something you can easily shut out too. But that's also one of the great things about reviews too, is that if you can write about stuff like that, people will take that in and sort of notice it more, and then they can either understand the film more or appreciate it a lot more on that level. So that's why it's great to have all these different perspectives. Where I would say that, yeah, like having this technical knowledge would not hurt you. In fact, I think it actually bolsters what you have to say about a film.
Sorry, I'm responding to somebody in the chat. Would you consider something like, especially with your animation background, character designs? If you don't like the character designs, would you consider that more of a technical or more of a artistic critique? Because I got a lot of criticism when I reviewed the anime Shiki many years ago, and the biggest problem for me with that wasn't that the story was bad, or wasn't that I didn't like the story, but the character designs to me were so distracting that they took me out of the story.
Well, that would be, I guess that would be kind of like a conflict between the objective and the subjective of that. I mean, to a certain degree, it could be like a objective, because they're like, if the design clashes with something else, be it in the color or the landscape, or just the general setting of the story, that can be off-putting, and that can be more of a technical aspect. But whether or not it works within there, I think is more of an artistic deal. So it's kind of a mixture of both. It's both like technical in terms of how it fits in with the rest of the design, and more artistic, or I guess more on the subjective side, is if that worked for you. Because for some people that character design might work, or it might not bother them.
Sure.
And for other people it will. So yeah, it's a mixture of both for character design.
I know, maybe not conversely, but from a live action standpoint, it's not the exact same thing, but it also is kind of rides a line between art and technical. I know when there's not a lot of cuts in a scene that I get distracted, I get anxious. Sometimes
Sure.
There was a show, I think it's called Nosferatu. It's about some guy that kidnaps people and brings them to a Christmas amusement park. But in an early episode, there was like a 3 or 4 page scene where they just stayed on this very awkward shot, and they just racked focus back and forth between the characters. And I'm watching that like, did they not have time to shoot other stuff, or is this like on purpose? What's going on? But yeah, I think a lot of people wouldn't have noticed.
I don't think, I guess it depends, because a lot of people do pay attention to cuts, like how long they go for and how quick they go for. And sometimes that can be a hindrance as well. Like a lot of times when we think of long cuts, we tend to, think of like the Alfonso Cuarón type stuff from like Children of Men or Gravity, where it's just like, it goes on and on for like 8 to 10 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
And you're just like, wow, that was like, they did that all in one take. But like I also think about that too in terms of like how like classic films would do. Like if you go back and watch a lot of like golden age Hollywood type stuff, you'll notice that like a lot of those films didn't really cut that much. Like they'd let scenes linger. Like they let the camera flow through there, and it would take a long time between cuts. A lot of people like to bring this up because like when you look at kind of like modern action films, they cut so quickly between them. Like I think like the average like time between like a cut is just like a few seconds. Um, so like a lot of people will cite Taken 3. There's a scene where Liam
Of
Neeson
course.
climbs a fence, and it and it's like 14 different cuts
Oh my
within the span
goodness.
of less than a minute. So,
I I know that when I'm working on something and I see that a scene is 1/8 page, and it's like Bob opens a door, and we're on our fourth or fifth setup, and it's like, what are we doing? Did we get enough wides of this? Now we're doing a close up of the hand on the door, and it won't even necessarily be an important scene. They're just opening the door to go to work.
mhm.
But I do wonder, and you'd probably be better to answer this question. The more golden age films, do you think the reason that they let the cuts linger longer is because for artistic purposes, or do you think it's because we were still learning a lot about film editing and maybe people were afraid to take risks? I know, like, if you go way, way back, a lot of scenes are just the master shot for the entire scene because they
Oh
just
yeah,
didn't know, like, oh, we could
yeah.
cut.
Even for a while after that, they didn't. Like I think John Waters didn't know that you could just cut and then do like nonlinear editing. Um, so yeah, I think it was kind of a mixture of both. I think they knew there were some limitations at the time to, just like straight up editing film the way it was done classically. But then at the same time, I think it seemed to like make more sense because if a scene worked, you just let it play out,
Sure.
as opposed to shooting multiple takes from multiple angles, because that would mean you would have to spend more time filming, and especially back then when you had to pay for film stock, which was
Oh yeah.
which was pretty expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You,
I think it's a mixture of both, and I think like fortunately for most of the time they did long takes, they had like actors who ran through it just enough times that they could accomplish that most of the time, depending on the talent you got.
you bring up a point that I hadn't considered, that they were working with film, so they were probably a lot more nervous to make as many cuts. Whereas with digital, you
Oh
have
yeah.
as many cuts as you have as undos on the keyboard. Um,
Mhm.
they do still shoot things in film though. On film, it's not as common in the stuff that I work on. But
Mhm.
Uncut Gems was shot on film. Quiet Place was shot on film. I only worked on the last week, so don't think I'm that special. I just drank coffee. It's a silent movie.
Mhm.
Um, but that was shot on film with, I think, 3 or 4 cameras at a time. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, and I mean, like, yeah, now it's kind of like like the retro chic thing to do is to like is to say you're going to be committed to shoot it on film, which was yeah, it's a little bit easier now that we have like a little bit more like technical aspects to make that not as trickier as before. Like a great example of knowing like how hard it was to shoot with film was there's a film on Netflix called Dolomite Is My Name, in which one of the concerns they have with running out of money is running out of film stock and trying to go find some more and to shoot. Which is there's like a lot of great films about filmmaking. That's I think one of my favorites of the last decade.
That's funny.
So
It's a
so
big
yeah, there's
concern.
a lot to that.
There's a. It's not as powerful as it used to be, but there used to be a unused film side hustle that some film crew members would do, because you'd get to the end of the film reel and they're like, okay, we don't have enough for another take. We're going to cut it here. And sometimes people would save all of that. I think they call them the shorts or whatever. And then they would sell those on the side to like indie filmmakers.
Yep, I think they reference that in Dolomite.
That's probably how they made the film. Uh,
That's how you did it.
yep.
Uh, so yeah, like yeah, the technical aspects are a big part of that. So So I guess I'll like go through like quickly here, like how how the process of like writing a film review goes from a professional standpoint, which is usually basically you write for a few years, and then you just kind of like build up your popularity through there. You get other people reading your stuff, and then you attract through different outlets, and eventually you'll get to a point where you will get invited to press screeners. Where you basically you go to the theater, you watch the film, usually with a crowd, unless it's like a closed press screening. You generally write down notes. Sometimes they will give you a spoiler warning or a spoiler sheet. They will not make you sign an FDA. Not an FDA.
An FDA.
What's
oh goodness.
Food and Drug.
NDA.
NDA. Yes.
Yeah, that's close. It's the NBA. They canceled that. Sorry.
Well, the thing is, like, I've never. It's weird. Like, I never signed an NDA until last year. And it was pretty wild. The only time I ever signed an NDA was for Hellboy.
Yeah, they're really worried about that getting out.
Actually, if they're worried about it, they do social media blackouts where nobody will talk about it on social media. They'll have like a very quiet and closed press screener, which they did. But when we got there, they had to sign an NDA, which is weird because like usually when we go to like the bigger stuff that have like spoilers with it, like Marvel or Star Wars films, it's generally just on good faith. It just says like, hey, don't reveal this part of the film or don't talk about this in your review. And we're like, okay, that's fine. But yeah, then we get the NDA saying like, hey, don't publish the reviews until the embargo is up.
Oh boy.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the don't post your review until the video game has had time to sell to everyone.
Yeah, and again, this is like this is not quite like a sign thing. It's just kind of like a good faith thing. It's like you don't put up your review until the embargo lifts. If you do, then you've broken the code, and basically you don't get like press screeners anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, yeah, you wait for the embargo to drop. Usually the embargo drops about like a day or two. On average for most of them. Like I know like the Disney and Star Wars stuff generally drops on like 2 days prior. In some rare cases, like Fox will do this a lot. They will give you way early screeners and really early embargoes if they think they got something really good.
I wonder if these are the same screeners. I have a friend that's in CAS, the Cinema Audio. So, no, audio is the right word. I almost said auto. The Cinema Audio Society. And he gets these screeners. They're so funny because they on the disc it'll say like screener copy, break after you finish watching it, don't share or we're gonna come get you. And then you put it in and it'll say the exact same thing. It'll just jut your TV. It's like, this is a screener. If you share this, we hope you don't like your kids that much. And then even during the film, every once in a while the disclaimer will pop up on top of the movie. And it's like, seriously, we're going to come after your firstborn son. Do not share this. If you don't break it, we're going to know.
Seriously, they just put like your email up there so they know exactly who you are.
Well, we were wondering, like, are these like somehow encoded with your address? Are they going to know? Like, if you threw this up on a torrent site, are they going to know that it was you that did it?
That's a good way they do that. Like some of the screener stuff I do get, they do put your email up on there.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, so they know, like that's the hardcore way to do it.
That's got to be really difficult to manage from a technical standpoint, but honestly, like the screeners that he gets are so low quality that like you don't want to share that with anybody. Like we got a screener for the Joker and it was almost unwatchable.
Yeah, was it on like a little blank DVR?
Yeah, it was on a DVR and like in a cardboard case, and like the resolution was super low. I think it was pixely, and like even the sound mix was like a little bit worse. I don't know how they pulled that one off.
Oh, did you get a cardboard case? I just literally got like one of those like bubble wrap things, and the DVD just slid out of it. That's how it came. So yeah, they take note of that.
Yeah. Well, we didn't share it, so if you're listening to us, the Academy, we put it in the shredder. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's gone. Don't worry. Besides, it's barely unwatchable anyway.
It ruined our
The
shredder, so
Well, most of the DVDs, yeah, because they're like bouncing around in packages, I can't barely watch them. They just skip all around. So I guess that's one way to ensure that it won't get in the wrong hands. So yeah, basically you post your review up when the embargo's up, and generally Rotten Tomatoes will pick it up within like a few hours, depending on how close contact they're. Generally, Rotten Tomatoes will pick it up pretty quickly on the embargo drop, because they generally like to do the whole tomato meter reveal thing as quickly as possible, which is kind of a odd thing to do because a lot of critics won't get their stuff out on time. So like it's kind of like a preemptive thing, like, oh, this is based on like 10 reviews that we got in the last hour. So yeah, that's generally how it goes out. Now in terms of like how you would write your review and how like what makes it like more notable that you would get up to that status of getting on Rotten Tomatoes, it's debatable, like how you get that far. Usually it's dependent on like how much viewership you have. But I would say like a lot of like the notable critics, most of the ones that I read are the ones that are not as like keen to just do plot synopsis. Like they're willing to discuss a lot more about the film, usually from like a cultural relevance or from a personal perspective, something that gives insight, because that's essentially what makes reviews worth reading, is that they offer a little something more as opposed to whether or not it's good or bad. If you just want good or bad, you could just look at like audience scores that will generally give you like a 1-sentence rating.
sure. I don't know if this is super relevant, but you've been doing panels with me for a decade. You're used to this by now. I think a big reason why I don't write professionally is because I write nonsense. Crunchyroll was hiring writers a couple months ago, and I submitted an article pitch, and it was just deplorable. I told them that I wanted to write a story about how I'm in love with the elevator at the Otakon Convention Center, but I wanted to write it from the perspective of like somebody that's really moe for something. I don't believe, have been to Otakon. It's at what is it? The Washington D.C. Convention Center, I think is what it's called. And
I think so, yeah.
the hotel lobby elevator for the hotel that's connected to it, when you get down to the lobby, it goes lobby. And it's just so sensual and insane. And like,
Did you blush?
oh my God. And like you get to your floor and it's like 15th floor, sailor. I was like, I don't know, maybe they didn't respond to that email. And that's why I'm stuck
that seems
writing
like the highlight of Otakon right there.
It's just, well, your loss, Crunchyroll. Yeah, they're telling me in the chat I should write it anyway. I have to get off my ass and write. You keep talking about the process, and I'm waiting for you to say the part where, so first, you sit at your computer and you don't write for 3 hours, and you question every decision you've ever made in your life. Then you drink, and now you've lost the motivation to not write, and now you're just drinking and complaining on the internet about how you're not more successful.
Well,
Then
you're on a deadline, so existential dread is a sometimes food.
Finally, you pass out, you wake up 3 hours before your deadline, and you write the first thing that comes to your head. The editor says it's gold, and print. And that has been I don't have deadlines because I always write on my own blogs, but that has been almost everything I've ever written. It's too much.
Usually, yeah, it can bunch up on you, like a lot of like the deadlines the general window of time you have to write a review on average, if you want to meet the embargo date, is about like 2 days, I would say, on average. Sometimes you might have like a week, but generally you have less than a week, and usually you only have like about 2 days before that embargo drops, so you've got to be on the ball if you want to make it. Like some don't make it, some just like, if you take like a day or two, that's fine. But generally, if you want to get the reviews out there as quickly as possible, yeah, you're on a tight deadline.
Yeah.
Like it's especially true for they do really tight deadlines for For like the big Disney stuff, like Star Wars and Marvel, you will generally have like, I think with like the last Star Wars film, I had less than 24 hours before the
Wow.
embargo dropped. So you got to be quick.
How, like, I can see that being enough time to maybe write something, but is that enough time for your editor to actually read it? Or are you talking
uh,
about writing on your own blog?
well, it depends who you're going through. If it's a site that just lets you, that doesn't have an editor, that just wants it to go up, then it goes up.
Nope.
Some sites I do write for, they do have editors.
Mm-hmm.
And the editors, if they are committed to it, they will generally be pretty quick. Like some editors I've worked with will have something edited and ready to go within like an hour or two.
Wow.
Like they're yeah, I've been very lucky to have editors that responsive, because I've been to a lot of places that just like editors will not get back to you for like a day or a week or something like that. So yeah, if it's a hot ticket item, yeah, they'll respond pretty quickly to that.
That reminds me of it's a fairly cliched scene in a lot of movies when the cop that's already been kicked off the case finds a really juicy update or whatever, something that makes the case rock solid. So they call the police chief at 3 a.m. and wake him up. And they answer, and the wife is like, "Honey, what are you doing? Go back to bed. Go back to bed. Why are you calling me right now? Oh, you just finished the Star Wars review. I'm on it."
That's literally what happened with because yeah, like no, the Star Wars review embargo,
Oh no,
I
it
think,
is
was for
Star
like
Wars.
2 a.m. Yes, the embargo was at some odd time, like 2 a.m. Like usually they do like maybe like 10 a.m. or 8 a.m. Like generally when people are awake.
Maybe they're thinking Pacific time. For them, that'd be like midnight, right?
Could be, yeah. But
That's
still
ridiculous.
Yeah, usually you let the embargo drop when, people are
Awake.
available, awake to read it. In some weird cases, yeah, it does fluctuate like internationally. Like sometimes we noticed there was a film called Tag where apparently the Australian embargo had dropped early. So we were all confused, like, wait, why are the reviews out? What happens? Like, oh, the Australians got to put the reviews up. Okay.
In Australia, they have to do the reviews in reverse because of the Coriolis effect, right? That was a dumb joke. I'm sorry, everybody. Why is this review backwards? I have to read it in my mirror. It's because you're American.
Counterclockwise.
This is why I'm not allowed to do panels.
That's all right. So, yeah, the general philosophy that I generally embrace is that, a lot of critics are more focused on more what the film is, more like the themes of the film. Like there's an old saying that a film is not about what it is about, but how it goes about it. So in other words, like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's a film about him hunting treasure.
People are booing my Coriolis effect joke.
Oh, you Philistines.
Oh, they're going to turn on the convention. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's great.
Boo this man.
Oh my goodness. So okay, right. So yeah, the Indiana Jones it's about treasure hunting, but a lot of people don't love the film because it's about treasure hunting. They love it because it's Harrison Ford doing cool stuff with the whip and shooting people and fighting Nazis. It's about how it goes about it. Indiana Jones is not the first film to do treasure hunting, and it's not the last. You got your choice. But there's a reason why we like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's because how they go about it and what they do with it. So that's like a grander scale of how I generally look at film, and a lot of people, a lot of critics usually tend to view film through that lens. And the reason that I'm laying all that out right now is so like to gain a perspective of like the general discourse of like how people usually respond to film criticism. So
it's usually all positive, right?
Yes, everyone loves critics, right?
They love them.
Of course.
You just carry them on that thing that people carry kings on. 4 people have to do it. I don't know the name of these things. Is it a palanquin? That sounds like a torture device.
Don't get that wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Palatine. Wait, no, that's not what I meant.
I thought put him in the Iron Maiden. He didn't like the Garfield movie.
That's not what I thought it was.
Oh,
Now,
people are talking about Cats in the chat. Did you watch Cats?
Oh, yeah. You want to know how crazy it was? I saw Cats in a day where I'd already been to the theater twice. Like,
Oh, no.
I think I went to go see Little Women, and then I saw Star Wars in the afternoon. And then that night I went to go see Cats. And Cats, my brain just like melted. I forget when it was. It might have been when either Judi Dench was rubbing up on people or when Ian McKellen was lapping milk.
Oh, no.
Like a cat.
Did you see
somewhere around there?
Did you see the unpatched version?
Do you
originally it got released with a bunch of like VFX glitches?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we actually did notice that the ring on Judi Dench's finger is in the very first cut, that we got. Where she has like her hand over her chest in the end. There's like, wait, that's the ring. That doesn't look cat-like.
I read an article that the VFX team had to spend countless hours. I'm sorry for what I'm about to say. They spent countless hours airbrushing out buttholes in that film.
Right. Yeah, that's how we started the hashtag release the butthole cut.
Yeah. There was a great tweet. It wasn't a real tweet, but it said the director of Cats thinks that now's a good time to re-release Cats because he's pretty sure that everybody was just busy when it came out the first time.
Oh no, I'm not gonna forget Cats. I just lost my brain like halfway through it, and then I was just loving just how absurd this film was.
Wasn't Taylor Swift in that?
Yes.
Oh no.
She has one song about McCavity not being there.
Well,
and I cannot wait for midnight screenings of this where everyone goes nuts and just laughs their asses off at this stuff, because this is like destined for like crazy midnight cult viewings.
Well,
good film, but it is so much fun for how out there it is and how strange it is. So yeah, that's Cats.
Yeah. There's a question in YouTube chat that says, "What do you guys think about Robert Bresson?" I'm a plebe, and I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
My brain is broken from Cats.
Is that one of the cats?
No, I don't think so. I think
the chat's going to annihilate us.
I think wasn't he like new wave French, one of the new wave French directors? I think I've seen one of his films.
Oh yeah, they said old French filmmaker.
Yeah, it's I think I saw I think it's either Man Escaped, I think it's called.
Yep, somebody just name dropped that.
Yeah, I saw that like a while back. Like that's the thing, like I'm constantly trying to like expand my horizons and go back and like watch stuff that came out long before I was born and catch up on like classic Hollywood stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sort of just now getting through like some of like the French new wave stuff. Like I've been getting a lot into Varda's filmography. So yeah, Bresson is going to be one I'm going to have to come back, because I think I watched Man Escaped. I think back in college, I think I watched that. So yeah, there's a lot I'm still catching up on that I still try to watch. So I expand my horizons.
It's possible that I've seen some of this stuff. When we still had bars, one of my favorite bars, there was a bartender that would always play old foreign films, but he'd play it without the sound on and without subtitles. So I've seen a lot of movies that I don't know the names of or understand.
Well, yeah. Well, that happens.
We watched one called, I think it was called Orgy of Dracula. That was not a French film. I think that was Ed Wood.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that makes sense. Was it? Oh, it was like Orgy of the Dead.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
That is not a film that anybody should watch. It's just Dracula hanging out watching women do strip teases. And I approve of this. This pleases me.
Oh, that's a great cult film.
I'm sorry. Keep going.
So okay, so like a lot of like the crazy discourse from film criticism generally spawns from Rotten Tomatoes, and it mainly comes from a misreading of Rotten Tomatoes. So like Rotten Tomatoes, as its function, is supposed to be like a review aggregate site. It gathers up all the reviews, it collects them, and then it tries to, as best as it can, sort between rotten and fresh, whether or not they liked it or they didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be hard to decide which way they're going. There's like the elusive 2.5 stars where Rotten Tomatoes isn't sure if you liked it or not, and they just kind of guess. And sometimes they can get it wrong, and you can actually go back. I think I've heard some critics are like, no, this was intended to be rotten, so go back and change that. So yeah, basically it tabulates that, and then it puts your tagline up there, and then the link to your review. And the thing is, most people don't get that far as the tagline. Most people get as far as the number percentage.
Sure.
And usually once they get that far, you'll see these reactions all the time. And this is partially why I don't like the tomato meter reveal, is because usually when they do this, they just grab the percentage like really quick. Like, here's the number, here's the percentage reveal. And generally, if that's all people have to go on for a film, they will start making these weird theories about, how this happened and why this happened. And will all be based just on speculation and just on like their own perspective of how they view a film and how they view, the critics responding to it, without going into actually reading the reviews. Like some of them might make it as far as the tagline, but generally they won't do that.
What you're telling me,
and this is a problem. Yeah.
You're telling me that the reason that you didn't like The Great Gatsby is because in high school you had to read it. And even though you liked the book at the time, you didn't like the teacher that assigned it to you. And so you gave the movie a 2.7 out of 10. I don't know. That bit kind of lost its way.
Somewhat. Yeah, I think you might have been somewhere going somewhere with that.
I love those percentages though. It's like, how do I feel about this part of the movie? I'm going to give it a 4.3. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about this.
Well, in a sense too, like they're arbitrary as well, because like my reviews for Rotten Tomatoes go through Film Inquiry, and in Film Inquiry I don't do stars or letter grades or ratings or anything like that. They basically just have to read it and decide whether I liked it or not through there.
Oh no.
And they usually been pretty good at figuring it out. They've usually been pretty good at figuring out whether I liked it or not. And generally, if you read a review, you get that impression, and then they'll, they can read it through there. But yeah, like if you just read the numbers and just look at you just look at the percentage, people get all like this weird theories about, how critics, are out for a film, or critics don't understand a film. And I love when they do this too. They cite the audience percentage and show like a disconnect between them, which is weird, because it's like anecdotal evidence. Like they put it up when Sonic the Hedgehog came out, and they said like, well, audiences liked it a lot more than critics. And then they said like, well, can't audiences and critics agree on anything? When literally at that time, but that's the thing. Like at that time, like Birds of Prey, the audience and critic score was literally accurate at the time. So it's like, that's the thing though. It's like, it's just numbers on that scale. It doesn't really, showcase how, it's like a very, very rough acclamation of, how many critics agree. And like 60, another thing people don't really read about that too, is like, they don't look at that 63% or, whatever percentage it is as, the amount of critics who liked a film. They generally look at it as an average rating. Like some people interpret it like, I would not give this film like a 69%. It would be like a 40% or something like that. It's like, that's not what they're grading it on. In fact, if you look right below it, they will list the average rating score of it too. So it's like, even the basic numbers, they can't read this stuff. It's like, does
Rotten Tomatoes factor in for outliers? Let's say me and you are the only people that are being factored in. I gave it a 2 out of 10. You gave it a 10 out of 10. Do they average those together even though they're so different?
I believe they have like a certain set where like only when they get like a certain amount of percentage in there will they actually give an accurate percentage of critics. I think it's somewhere around like it's in like the tens or 20s or somewhere around there. Because I've noticed like if you're the only critic on there, they won't do it, which actually happened with me. I am the only critic on Rotten Tomatoes right now who has a review of the Robotech movie.
You're probably the only person
that came out way back in the 80s.
You're the only one
I'm
that
the only
watched
person
it.
who bothered to write about it. In the state, well, you can get like international copies and stuff like that because yeah, it wasn't fully released in the States. So yeah, like they'll only tabulate like a certain amount on there. Generally, if it's, I think sometimes they do it like if it was only like 10 or so critics, they'll tabulate it. But yeah, like the key component here is just that yeah, you need to read this stuff, like, because generally if you read a review, you can gauge where that critic is coming from, what perspective that critic has, and how they feel about the film. And generally that's the great thing about reviews, is like a well-written review will give you an idea of the film, or even if you disagree with the critic, you can look at that review and say, you know what, this person didn't like the film, but based on what they described here,
I still have to kill
them. I think I might like that film.
Yeah, I don't usually let reviews get to me, because
Sure.
at the end of the day, what matters is, did I like it or not?
Sure. Because yeah, they're just they're opinions, and like the thing is, like, a lot of people will kind of take this, they take this the wrong way, as like it being like an objectivity, as though like, because a critic has said that this film is bad, well, if I like the film, does that make me wrong? And it's like, no, it does, because that's your opinion.
I honestly, I tend to read stuff about stuff that I already like from writers that I tend to agree with, because it's like going through an adventure, like getting to relive the film again through their eyes. I'm not reading the review because I want to know, should I go see it? I just want to, like, I want them to talk about that really cool part where the guy poured coffee on the other guy's face or something. I don't know anything about movies.
Sure. Yeah. Well, stuff to point out that they think are highlights of the film, and stuff to pay attention to. Yeah, as opposed to whether or not it's good or not. That, if it is good, and that's a key component of writing reviews, is what about the film made it good? Which scene did you love, and why did you love that scene? What was it? Was it funny? Did it make you laugh? If it's romantic, was it erotic? How did it make you feel, and what does it mean to you? That's the most important thing.
Ragnar in the chat is asking a great question. Have you ever refused to finish watching a movie or walked out of it?
Not in the theater. Like if I'm officially reviewing a film, generally if you walk out, that means you're not going to review it, which generally seems to be implied. There have been many times where I've wanted to, where I just get squeamish in my seat. But the way that I look at it is that, I take those feelings and I just put them into a review. And the thing is, like, I get where people come from, where they do want to walk out of a film. I've had that. I've heard from critics who have done that, where basically they're saying, look, I don't want to write a review about that. Life is short. I don't want to waste it with this film. And I don't blame them. But the thing is, I love writing about film. So if I'm in it, if I chose to be there, I'm there.
Sure.
I'm here for it. So yeah, like currently I have not broken my rule of walking out of a film. Not yet. There might be one that breaks me in the next year or so, but not yet.
I don't think I've ever walked out on a film. I've almost walked out on two. Now, I wasn't going there to write about them. But the Avatar movie, or I should say the movie Avatar, where everybody turns into blue, whatever or not, that movie was so long, and the person that I went to the film with, they, I don't know how they did this, but they got lost in the movie theater for about 35 minutes, so I almost just left. But then I don't remember the name of the movie, but I think it was Gerard Butler and Katherine Heigl are taking care of Christina Hendricks' baby, because Christina Hendricks dies in the first 5 minutes of the film. And there's a part in the middle where, every romantic comedy has this, where they have the big argument and then they
Yeah.
part ways. Well, in this, they have the big argument while wearing like tiger face paint. And I was like, I can't do this. But I stayed strong till the end.
The strange thing is, I know which movie you're talking about, but I don't remember the exact title. It's like Life Ordinary or something like that.
I don't know if anybody remembers the name of that movie. And I like bad romantic comedies. I went to the Ashton Kutcher and was it Natalie Portman hookup movie where they hook up and then start dating and then break up and start dating again. That movie's terrible, but I really liked it. And the guy's dad hangs out with Little John in the end, I think. It's a very, very weird film.
My goodness.
Passion Tentacle says, I walked out of Titanic when I was 6. Nice.
It was too scary.
Do you think they're going to survive the boat?
Broke apart. I don't care. No, they're fine. They're fine.
Oh, look, the guy with the violin still playing. Everything's okay.
All right. So, I guess I wanted to get to like another part that of the discourse that a lot of people tend to get confused with is the conflation of objectivity versus subjectivity.
Oh yeah,
within a review. A lot of people say this when they disagree with the view. They tend to come in with this argument of a review being objective. So this basically says like, I don't like the bias that comes with this review, and I don't like bias in my review, which goes counterintuitive to what a review is intended to be. A review at its core is subjective and biased.
Yeah.
So yeah, like objectivity, like a review can have objectivity, but the objectivity is a component of the review, not like the drive of it. So like I mentioned with Transformers, the aspect ratio shifting, objective.
Yeah.
Whether or not it bothered you, subjective.
Sure.
So there are parts of that are objective, but generally the way that the review will swing and what your opinion of the film is subjective. It will always be subjective. Anyone who thinks they can make an objective review is lying to themselves. There is no objective review. Even sites like Common Sense Media, which generally reviews films, for families, determining whether or not it's good or not for the families, those are still subjective. They still have star ratings. They still have, suggested ages. Objectivity is not like the drive of a review. It's a component, and you can use it well to describe a film. Like the best thing you can do with a review is to give it its day in court, to basically give people an idea of what the film is, what it is about, what happens in the film, and then, how that made you feel. And bring that out in the review. And it's weird because people have like this bizarre reaction to swing one way or the other. Like I have gotten angry comments, not on reviews for films that I've hated or films that I've absolutely loved. It's always been for films in the middle. Like I've said, like, it's strange. Like, cause like with Battle Angel Alita, I thought, okay, you know what? This is not a half bad, adaptation of an anime. It's not great, but hey, it's pretty fun. Like I like the way it's set up. It's a pretty good film. And I got so many comments from people saying, this is like the best film of the year. What is wrong with you? And then like the comments like spiraled out into talking about like feminazis and all this crazy crap that is like, what the heck? None of this I have mentioned in the review.
Oh, I think I remember you tweeting about that.
Yeah, it was like the strangest things. Like I didn't pay attention to those comments because apparently it held them all for review. And I just, it's like coming into your house and finding a dumpster fire. It's like, wait, how did this get in here? So I had to clean all that up. The same thing happened with the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Oh no.
I didn't think it was a very great film. But when I said like it was like just lukewarm, I started getting all these negative comments about like... and probably the worst one I ever had was like with Joker. Joker I thought was too meandering. It didn't really work for me, I think, in the greater context. So of course I got a comment from someone saying that, I wish someone shot you in the head in the theater.
Oh, that's fair. I like Joker, but I don't have as much of a background in film criticism as you. I'm not as jaded. I have trouble with anime.
Mm.
It's a lot harder to grab me with an anime.
And that's the thing too.
I've seen
It's
too
like
much.
well, the thing is too. It's like yeah, I've thought about it too. Like where like my negative response to the Joker is is like kind of like a more like detailed and nuanced one about how I feel it depicts mental health by kind of like breaking it down into more of like a dangerous like concept, which I think has some like odd like odd balances with like the class warfare thing in how it stages that. So like this is the important thing about reading a review. I didn't dislike Joker because like I thought the performances were bad. The performances are fine. It's these other little aspects that I take into account when I watch a film that shapes my opinion and that shapes that review. That's often why I write about film. I think about it a lot, and I take like so many aspects that I can into it, trying to take in more technical aspects as well. So it's a whole bunch of stuff that you take in with it. Um, the other thing too is like sometimes like it's weird. Like I mentioned, like when you make lukewarm responses, you will get odd blowback from it. One of the reviews that I've had blow up on me was Peter Rabbit.
Yeah?
Peter Rabbit is
Oh, I'm
Peter
thinking of
Rabbit.
Peter Cottontail. It's like, who's the diehard Peter Cottontail fan out here?
But here's the weird thing: Peter Rabbit somehow got thrown into this weird culture war because there was a scene in the film where Peter Rabbit learns that McGregor has a blackberry allergy and decides, well, I want McGregor out. So what am I going to do? I'm going to pelt him with blackberries and throw one into his mouth. And once the blackberry gets into his mouth, McGregor goes into anaphylactic shock and collapses on the floor and has to stab himself with an EpiPen just at the last minute before passing out from death. And I thought, this scene doesn't work, and especially since they make like a preemptive apology before the scene happens to kill off McGregor because of his allergies. It's like that didn't sit well with me. Well, apparently, like a council of like parents for like allergies picked up this review. They pushed it out there, and they pushed for this petition for Sony to apologize for that. And immediately once this happened, I started getting all the, from like the culture warriors saying like, well, look how like politically correct the world is. We can't have this. Like, look, I didn't think it was a very good scene, and I didn't think they did well with the slapstick that they're doing here. And it's very bereft of what they're doing within this film. And then I got all these like comments calling me dickless and all this.
Look, I can't even make the joke. It's too obvious.
But yeah. But yeah, that's the thing. It's like they just want to declare that because, like, generally, like, one of the arguments says, like, well, what about like Looney Tunes? Like, you people would decry Looney Tunes slapstick, but that's the thing. It's like within like the context of Peter Rabbit, like Looney Tunes, they define that death is not a thing in Looney Tunes. Like, in other words, if Elmer Fudd gets a dynamite to the face, he's not going to spend the next scene in the burn ward. He's going to rub the soot off. Like Peter Rabbit, they established at the beginning of the film, death is a real thing. And that Peter does want to kill McGregor, and he is going to kill McGregor. So that didn't really sit well with me. So like, there's a lot of context that has to be taken in with these films, as opposed to like whether or not it's good based on like one sentence or percentage reviews. So yeah, that's. And then there was like, I'll briefly mention, there was the odd thing with the Last Jedi fan script. That they wanted The Last Jedi to be stricken from the canon and wanted it remade with a fan script that they wanted to. It brought about one of the most hilarious posters, I think. So something good came from that.
I'll tell you what. If you want to have a bad time, try to watch one of the new Star Wars with me. Oh, Jesus, I'm dying. I was staying with a friend in Minnesota for vacation. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to watch the new trilogy?" I'm like, I didn't even watch the second trilogy, so I'm not going to know what's going on. I've only seen the originals, and I saw them when I was a child. He's like, "Oh, it'll be fine." And we're watching. I don't remember the name of the first one, but I was asking so many annoying questions the entire time. I'm like, oh, is that Kylo? Oh, I thought he was a good guy. Hey, is this the one where he takes his shirt off? Have you seen the memes? How do the lightsabers work? Oh, is that Han Solo? I thought he was dead. Hey, Carrie Fisher's in this? That can't be right. Is she CG'd? And he's like, shut up, man. Jesus Christ. Watch the movie. It's
What
like
is he going to fight with Scarlett Johansson?
it's like 2 hours long, and I talked for the entirety of the movie.
Yeah. So yeah, that new trilogy is it's very much the like for like people who are ingrained with Star Wars. That's particularly why they push like that marketing of showing that generational shift of this generation introducing their kids to Star Wars and all that, so that they would be able to pick up on all this stuff, because it does rely a lot on what's gone on before.
He did not invite me to watch the next film.
I would imagine so. It's like, you have homework now, and then he just hands you all the trilogies.
I paid for the pizza that night, so I take no responsibility. I feel like I paid my penance. Somebody says, who needs riff tracks when you have confused guy in the audience? That's me. We've got about 5 minutes. I don't know if there was any closing thoughts or stuff that you wanted to promote.
Well, I'll close with my thoughts about why I do this. There's a lot of people out there who talk about film, strictly from like a cynical and like pessimistic viewpoint. But the thing is, like, if you're really in this for the long haul and you're serious about writing about films, you got to have a love for it. And that doesn't mean you have to love every film you go into. It doesn't mean you have to agree with the critics and everything. It does mean, though, that you have to have a devotion to that you love film. So in other words, the easiest way that I can describe this is, I would much rather talk about the films I love than the films I hate. Because the films that you hate, you can only talk about them so much before you're just stringing jokes together, and you're just finding weird ad hominems.
I guess I do just string jokes together. My big thing is
that's the thing. Yeah, if you just want to make jokes, that's fine.
Yeah, that's if I don't know people's names, I just make up names in the review. Like, scary gun guy went after angry that his kid got kidnapped guy. Wait, I think I got that backwards. That's Taken, probably.
Yes. Sometimes I do that. If the film is that bland where I feel like it might warrant that, sometimes I do that. So
people are asking if you have another panel. I believe you have a 5 p.m. panel on Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern.
Yep. The one other thing I wanted to is, like, the best thing I love about film is empathy. Is that films allow you to experience someone else's viewpoint, someone else's body of work, gain someone else's perspective. The best quote I love for describing it is, there's a film called The Hero that stars what's his name? Sam
Samwise Gamgee.
Sam. But it's a little film called The Hero, and there's a great scene where they say, like, I had a dream last night, and his friend says, I don't want to hear about your dreams. Well, do you like movies? It's like, yeah, I like movies. Movies are other people's dreams, asshole. So, that's the best way to describe it. So, yeah. Do you want to take any more questions, or?
I don't know if we have enough time for questions. We have less than 2 minutes.
Okay.
Even though I'm on this panel, I'm still I have to play by the rules. We only get an hour, so after this is done, I'm talking about con stuff. But
okay.
You have another panel on Sunday, 5 p.m. It is a history of Americanization.
Yep.
I'm happy to join you on that one as well if you want. I don't know what you're talking about. Again, but that's kind of how we always do this. I show up and make jokes. You show up with a plan.
Yeah. Should I promote my stuff?
Yeah. Where can people find your writing?
They can find most of my blog writing at movieswithmark.com. Otherwise, you can read my movie reviews at filminquiry.com and twincitiesgeek.com. And you can find me on Twitter at MadnessMark. And I also have some movie history books on Amazon, like History of Video Game Movies and the Best, Worst, Weird Movies of the 1990s.
Nice. That's just about our time. I appreciate you coming on here, Mark. Thank you for letting me join in with you. Yeah, you have a good night. I hope you stick around for some more of the programming.
In and out all weekend. This is a blast to listen to.
Well, you have a good night, Mark.